Hi everyone, welcome to this masterclass. I am Karishma, your host for the session. Some of you may have read in the description of what this class is all about. For those who haven't, let me quickly brief you on the topic. Today's masterclass is about understanding the nature and importance of unlearning in order to relearn. I'm sure you all know what learning is. After all, that is what we've been told to do right from our childhoods, right? You need to learn to brush your teeth, you need to learn how to read, you need to learn to catch a ball, so on and so forth. But did anyone ever told you to unlearn something? Have you ever attended a class to unlearn a skill? The truth is, yes, we all have, especially as grown-ups. What we really do in any class is we unlearn something that we have learned before to relearn something completely new. Now you all must be wondering what happens in this process of unlearning. Is it simply forgetting things, like erasing things from your mind? Absolutely not. This is a phenomenon which occurs on its own in our brain. When we challenge ourselves to learn something new and break an older belief about our limited abilities. Sounds too abstract, isn't it? Well, unlearning sure is an abstract concept, but it is also too real. To help you understand what unlearning looks like in real life and how it affects us, I am going to give you a sneak peek into my story and share the experiences where I had done some unlearning for myself, and also how I witnessed the same phenomena occurring in some other people's lives. I was born and raised in a small city in Madhya Pradesh. Back in 90s, people in my city were fairly narrow-minded. Needless to say, I was growing up in a conservative society and hence developed a mindset that carried more limitations and less possibilities. I spent the first 15 years of my life identifying myself only as a shy and introverted person who was conditioned to behave in an ideal manner as per the Indian social norms. But I always felt that there is more to life than what I see around me. And so, I wanted to move out of my protective shell and explore the world. I requested my dad for the same by giving a reason that I needed better guidance in my higher studies. To my surprise, he agreed instantly. Thankfully, my dad didn't share the same mindset as others in our neighborhood. And so, my journey as an independent person started. I was always fascinated by science, especially biology, and so I chose the same as main subject in high school. Back then, people used to strongly believe that a successful career can only be built on a few mainstream professions. And since I chose biology, the only valuable career option for me was to become a doctor. To accomplish that, I joined a coaching institute in Kota to prepare for medical entrance exam. I was in a new city among the people from all over the country. People with different cultures, different mindsets, they even spoke different languages. Me, being a shy 15-year-old, couldn't open up easily among them. I was quite judgmental and very selective in my lifestyle choices. Now that was the time of internet cafes, where information wasn't available on our fingertips. People would simply take in the information on its face value without being able to verify its genuinity. There was no reason to justify why being a doctor was the only valuable career option for me. I was getting suffocated by such restricted ideas, and perhaps because of the same inner conflicts, I developed physical illnesses. Sadly, none of the doctors could diagnose the problem and prescribed only ineffective treatments which made things even worse. Somehow, I managed to pass the school exams, but then dropped the idea of becoming a doctor. I think the reasons were obvious, right? That was the very first time I broke the conventional belief of our education system and took a decision that made more sense to me. My inner conflicts helped me discard the older restraining beliefs and made me follow my true calling. Now, this was my first experience of unlearning. I pursued my interest in science anyway and graduated with a degree in biotechnology. As I was growing and living independently, I wanted to be financially independent too. The collective belief was that to be financially independent, you need to find a good job. And to get a good job, you better score higher degrees from a renowned college. Now, another rat race, and yet another inner conflict. Where was the conflict? Well, the truth was, that I wasn't even motivated towards the corporate jobs in the first place. Simply working for 10 hours straight, staring on screens, meeting deadlines, it was all too robotic for me. Without a purpose, it just did not seem meaningful. I was mainly interested to find a job which could add some purpose to my life and allow me to pay my bills at the same time. But of course, this didn't seem possible to me at that time. I used to see people going for regular jobs and then seek for some volunteering roles in NGOs over the weekend just to find the balance between earning good money and finding satisfaction. I was really getting tired of this herd mentality. People following the crowd blindly, killing their own ideas and interest. I mean, on what logic do we do that? Today, after doing tons of research and observation in psychology, I finally understand the concept of cognitive biases and how they influence our decisions and judgments. And interestingly, there is a dedicated term for this herd mentality behavior as well. Now, this is called the bandwagon effect, which means the tendency to do or believe things because many other people do or believe the same. And I was a person who was probably fighting against this cognitive bias. Well, my fight came to an end when I got selected for the Teach for India Fellowship Program. I finally discarded this belief as well, and yet I had my another unlearning experience. With TFI, I gained a position where I could afford my living and use my knowledge and skills to create something meaningful. I was sharing my space with extraordinary individuals from all walks of life. And I wonder, how did this happen? It's like I was introduced to a parallel world of professionalism and learning. Here, the degrees did not matter, college names did not matter, the scores did not matter, but what mattered was the people with passion and the right mindset. Now, me being a shy, introverted person, initially didn't think that I could fit in. But then, as my beliefs were changing, so was my perception, and thus my behavior. In fact, I didn't even realize when I came out of the shell of an introvert and became an outspoken teacher. This is when I experienced a significant change in my personality, and that's when I realized the importance of unlearning as well. Now, before I go any further, may I ask you to take a moment and reflect back on your life. Have you lately felt any desire to do something new or learn something different that you thought you couldn't do before? If yes, then what were the conflicting thoughts you encountered? Were you able to overcome those thoughts? If yes, that's wonderful. That means you have unlearned something already in your life. But if not, then you know what you need to unlearn today. Right? Cool. Awesome. Now I would like to share another experience that caught my attention and drove me to think even deeper on the effects of beliefs and mental models. During the TFI fellowship, I was managing a class of 50 amazing kids, and among one of them was Diksha. She was a sweet little girl, very innocent and sharp, but she was attached to a peculiar condition. Her normal movements were somewhat like this. Before you make any judgments, please understand that she carried a belief that she was a slow person right from the time she became conscious of herself. She was the same when she started schooling, and so everyone, including her, were convinced that it was her natural state. Now, one fine day during festival time, all the kids were celebrating and dancing in the class. Among one of them was Diksha. As I spotted her, I was surprised because she was unconsciously dancing in joy, pacing herself to every beat of the song. I was astonished. I instantly made a video of her on my phone and showed it to other people as well. It came as a surprise to everyone, but then we all understood that her condition was just in her mind and not really a permanent nature of her body. In fact, when she saw herself in the video, even she was surprised. It's important to note that she was only physically slow, but mentally very sharp. From that time onwards, we all, including my entire class, started encouraging her to do things faster. In a span of few months, she got to the normal speed. Now, this was a miraculous transformation that I got to witness in 2012. Would you agree with me if I say that Diksha had just experienced her first unlearning? On a scale of 1 to 10, how helpful you think it was for Diksha? In my journey as an education professional, I have witnessed many stories of learning, but also a lot more stories of unlearning. And trust me, what we call miraculous transformation in layman term is probably nothing but unlearning at work. Note that I was just exploring this phenomena of unlearning in my journey as an educator, but I never really came across the term unlearn officially until I joined the School of Accelerated Learning. I joined Seoul as a mindset educator in November 2018. At Seoul, I have the privilege to research and develop curriculum on the aspects of meta-learning and growth mindset. In fact, the very first session designed in the domain of meta-learning is to understand unlearning. At Seoul, we don't actively teach. Instead, we encourage our learners to become efficient learners by strategically guiding them in the process of learning. We encourage our learners to reflect, analyze, and challenge their self-limiting beliefs or abilities and work towards changing their perception. Now, learning is far easier if one has nothing to unlearn, like for children. But sadly, we grown-ups have a lot of unlearning to do. One story I would like to share here as it stood out strongly in my experience at Seoul so far. One of our learner, Karan, came to Seoul in August 2018. Now, Karan was a person who was constantly told in his school that he was comparatively a slow learner. That is, if others are taking 2 days to do something, he would probably take 4 or 5 days. He grew up with this mentality and belief that when he came to Seoul, he was already convinced that he would take longer than 15 weeks to complete the course. Because of this belief, he didn't even try harder in the first place. He had been redoing the basic concepts since August, which his cohort members finished in 1 month only. I realized where he was stuck and then started working with him. I tried to challenge his beliefs in many ways. I gave him independent tasks and I kept sharing real-life examples of growth mindsets. Eventually, it clicked. In January 2019, he cleared the fundamentals of JavaScript and moved to the next phase. Now he was so confident and agile that he could clear the concepts within the same time as everyone else. And finally, graduated in February 2019. He took his time to unlearn the fact that slow learning is not his permanent condition. It was just a belief that he was attached to for a long time. And so, he let that go. Now we know what unlearning looks like and how difficult and challenging it can be to actually go through this process. Since the concept is too abstract, it's quite impossible for some people to believe that unlearning is a real thing. To confirm that unlearning is real from the scientific lens, let's first understand the concept of neuroplasticity.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
Now we understand how the neurons in our brain arrange themselves in specific ways to create set pathways. So when we try to develop a new habit or learn a new skill, a new pathway is created, which we call as learning. In the same vein, when we try to get rid of an older habit or belief, the existing pathway has to break. Now this process is what we call unlearning. But is it easy to break habits? Now tell me, do you know how to ride a bicycle? Well, most of us do. Here is an amazing video of a guy who was well versed in riding a bicycle, but then he set on a journey to actually unlearn it. Let's see how he did it.
Hey, it's me, Destin. Welcome back to Smarter Every Day. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill and I was really proud of it. Everything changed though when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Destin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle.
All right. So the faster I go, the better.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels, every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So,
this way. Okay. All right, a second. All right, so, whenever you're ready. Wait. No, you have to keep your feet on. All right, here we go. Here we go. Oh, no! All right, back up.
Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a real astronaut. Are you gonna give up?
No.
Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up, you got it. Did you see his brain get it? So in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity, am I even saying that right, than an adult. It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm gonna see if somebody brings a bicycle and I'm gonna try to ride a normal bike.
It's backwards. It's backwards.
This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I could only redesignate that bias. After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment.
I got it. I'm back. Oh, it clicked. Hold it, it clicked. I got it. Okay, there it is. There was the moment. Okay, I can ride a bike.
I tried to explain this to the people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me.
That looked like I faked that, didn't it?
Yeah. Just a fake.
You think I'm faking. You don't believe me.
Oh wow, can you take a guess on what must be going on in his neural circuits? One thing I took from the video is that unlearning is not erasing the memory of anything. In unlearning, you only put the unwanted skills in a box and then put the box away. But whenever you need your older skills, you can always retrieve the box and get it back. Like how it happened for the guy at the end in the video. Now think about it. Is it possible for us to learn riding both types of bicycles at the same time? Or can we only ride one at a time by unlearning the other? Can we create parallel neurological pathways at the same time? Here is another video that might help you answer the above questions. Now there is a small school in Madhya Pradesh which is said as the only multidextrous school in India. Here, children learn to write with both of their hands. You must see it for yourself how efficiently these kids are writing using their both hands. And of course, they cultivate this habit with constant practice, and it does not happen overnight. Need I give more evidence to prove that your learning is not limited? Now next time you try something new and if you fail, just remind yourself that your brain is getting too rigid and you need to make it flexible again, just like how a child's brain is. You may encounter many inner conflicts, many judgmental thoughts, many contradictory thoughts. But after attending this session, you know that these inner conflicts exist for a reason. They are actually a strong indicator for us to know that it's time to let go of an older belief and a habit associated with it. Now that we are almost approaching the end of the video, let's look at some advantages of unlearning. Now, unlearning is a process of disruption, and we know that disruption has been the key to evolution. Hence, it is important that we understand the nature of unlearning and consciously allow it to happen by not getting too attached to our older identities, beliefs, or the information. The more we unlearn and relearn things, the more creative we get. When was the last time you got any appreciation for thinking out of the box? People who can unlearn fast are the ones who can learn faster. They are one of the most desired multi-skilled employees who can contribute in many ways to our companies. And last but not the least, it makes you free like a child, curious, creative, disruptive, and more balanced in your life. And hence, you must be open to unlearn.